Welcome back everybody to Mystery Files. And if you want a bonus story to come out during this week, then make sure to get this up to at least 60 likes. As of now, you can be a member, which means that join button right next to subscribe. Hopefully you're subscribed already, and if you hit the join button, then you get extra bonuses. You can just become a member on the first tier, and then as the tiers go up, you get extra videos a week. That means I gotta put my butt in this seat and make extra videos specifically just for you guys, just the members. But some of you preferred Patreon instead of that little join button, so I made the little join button, and now I made a Patreon, and it's going to be right there in the description as well. You might see now below the comment section, right, a bunch of this weird clothing. Those are my first drops of merchandise ever. We got a hoodie, which I haven't been able to get my hands on them yet, but we got these hoodies and shirts that are just my logo, and then we got other ones that just say Mystery Files, and then I think, which is the coolest one, it says Midnight Mafia, and you got this little mafia guy right here with his little hat and his little it's really cool. If you guys like that stuff, including mugs, the mug came out unreal for the Midnight Mafia. Check all that stuff out. Right now you can go to shopmrefiles.com, that's shopmysteryfiles.com, or you can just click on the link below right in my description right next to Patreon, or you can just click one of the items that you see under the comments and it'll bring you straight to the site. But these are limited and they're the first drops ever, so get them while you can, because 3 years from now, when I've gone through 50 different drops of merchandise, these will be the originals. Okay, announcements are out of the way. Now don't forget to find the hidden clue and put what it is with the timestamp in the comments to be entered into the giveaway. Alright, now grab yourself some popcorn, because as of now, it's time to slip into a mind that's not our own. Let's go. On a bitterly cold winter day in 1999, the small town of Krahulov in the Czech Republic was struck by a horrifying mystery. Vladimir Bastl, a hard-working man on his way to work, seemingly vanished into thin air. His footprints in the snow led to nowhere, abruptly just disappearing as if he had been snatched up by some invisible force. Panic and confusion swept through this quiet little town as people wondered what could have happened. Eyewitnesses reported seeing Vladimir walking along the desolate road at dawn, his figure illuminated by the pale moonlight. And then just a few hours later, his co-workers realized that he never showed up for work. And the abandoned house where he was supposed to be stood ominously there with its lights off, leaving no clues of Vladimir's whereabouts. Fear and unease spread through Krahulov like wildfire as word of Vladimir's mysterious disappearance spread. So his boss was immediately notified, but no one could explain how a man could vanish into thin air on a clear winter morning without a trace. And as fear gripped Vladimir's boss as he arrived at his employee's house, knowing something was terribly wrong, he decided to search every inch of that deserted home, finding only untouched breakfast and a cold cup of coffee on the table. So at this point, desperate for answers, he had an idea. So he released Vladimir's faithful dog from its leash, hoping that it could lead him to its owner. And so the dog was pulling ahead, eagerly following a trail of footprints in the fresh snow that led away from the house and towards Vladimir's place of work. And the further away that they traveled, the more chaotic and erratic the prints became, until suddenly the prints stopped altogether. And that's when the dog was just whimpering and growling, refusing to leave this ominous spot on the road. With this sinking feeling, Vladimir's boss picked up the trembling animal and carried it all the way back to the village. And like I said, as sun rose, panic spread through this town like wildfire, and the police were immediately called as an intense search of the area began. Every single inch was scoured by determined officers, firefighters, and even residents from neighboring villages that just joined in to help. But not one single clue could be found about Vladimir's disappearance. And as weeks passed by with no progress made in the search, eventually it was reluctantly called off until the snow melted in the spring. But even then, the police continued to comb through every inch of the area, the forests and the lakes and even abandoned buildings, searching for any sign of what could have happened to poor Vladimir. But they found nothing, not even a trace or any evidence of a crime, just this eerie silence that seemed to hang over this village. Not to mention, a couple of days after Vladimir's disappearance came, this strange barking of all the dogs echoing throughout the streets happened day and night. It was these unnerving sounds that sent shivers down the spines of the villagers as they wondered if it held any connection to Vladimir's mysterious disappearance. Plus, going back after just 3 days of searching, Vladimir's faithful dog mysteriously also vanished without a trace, which just added to this chilling mystery surrounding the disappearance. So desperate for answers, his family clings to these paranormal theories that they've always believed in. That their beloved son was taken by aliens or somehow slipped into another time or dimension. Believe it or not, Vladimir himself was the only skeptic in the family, refusing to entertain such far-fetched ideas about aliens and stuff like that. And the police, well, the police have their own theories, suggesting that he may have been struck by a car and his body disposed of elsewhere. However, skeptics argue against this possibility, pointing out that there would be clear evidence of an accident, yet there was none. So as the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, it seemed that the truth behind Vladimir's disappearance may never be revealed. And his family can only hope for closure someday, praying for some shred of information that will bring them peace after losing their loved one in such a perplexing way. Our next story starts off February 1997 in New York City. 21-year-old Fordham University student Patrick McNeill and his friends decide to blow off some steam over some drinks at a favorite student watering hole called the Dapper Dog, because the bar's lax ID policies made it a hot spot for underage drinking. Records confirm that the group was drinking late into the night until Patrick himself is witnessed emerging clearly highly intoxicated, stumbling onto the streets at approximately 2 a.m. And when Patrick fails to surface on campus or contact friends and family for over a week, these ominous concerns were raised. So local detectives scoured hospitals and shelters initially, suspecting standard alcohol-induced memory loss or mishap. But 10 days of canvassing passed without any sightings of the handsome student known for both his athletic and his academic talents. And as the days turned to weeks, turned to months without any clues, a cloud of unthinkable tragedy hangs over all of it. Then finally, on the 14th of March, a sudden macabre revelation. Patrick's lifeless body discovered floating in a remote Brooklyn waterway utterly bewildered investigators. For one, the corpse was found on its back, which was atypical for drowning victims. Fully clothed, wallet and jewelry was intact. That kind of rules out robbery. The autopsy reveals no physical trauma, no injuries that would indicate homicide. Yet, closer inspection unveils bizarre anomalies, leaving medical experts stunned. Patrick's body showed signs of unexplained charring along his head and torso. Additionally, fly larvae are detected in the groin area, conclusively determined to have been laid by indoor insects. This suggests that the victim's body was kept in an enclosed space while decomposing before secondarily winding up waterlogged in the river. In light of all these baffling autopsy findings contradicting this accidental drowning, lead medical examiner Dr. Charles Hirsch remarkably declares Patrick's cause and manner of death inconclusive. So the McNeill family launches exhaustive efforts probing their son's suspicious demise. Meanwhile, the dapper dog itself faces legal fire for serving underage students the night of Patrick's disappearance. But amidst this swirling finger pointing and accusations, the core unthinkable question remained. How and why did a healthy, athletic 21-year-old Fordham scholar allegedly drunkenly fall victim to a frozen river over 11 miles from his last known location? Even more unsettling, did dark forces intercede to deposit Patrick's imprisoned, decomposing remains in that winding waterway weeks later? And if so, why? Well, in subsequent months, during routine reinvestigation of Patrick's bewildering case, detectives uncovered a strikingly similar local student demise literally 1 year afterward that only deepened this dread that something sadistic was stalking New York's youth. In December 1997, 19-year-old Westchester student Larry Andrews embarks with friends via train to celebrate New Year's Eve in Times Square. And like Patrick, Larry becomes separated from his companions during a late-night bar festivities and fails to ever reunite. 6 agonizing weeks pass before Larry's fully clothed body is recovered from the East Rivers Bay Ridge Channel, nearly the exact location Patrick was found 10 months prior. Once again, all the cash and valuables on body, no external injuries detected, and no forehead lacerations or related trauma seen in over 90% of drowning victims from striking objects below surface. Another prime teen life violently interrupted without explanation. And as we're coming to, I just want to mention one thing as well. I remember for last New Year's, I was looking for a New Year's story, not a month ago, about a year and a month ago. And I remember I dropped this one story, and it was of a man in a similar situation where he was out with his friends drinking. All of a sudden, they saw him stumbling away, and then he was found kind of in the exact same thing. And what was around him was also around these people. So bear with me, but I think all of these could be intersecting. Okay, so as connections rapidly link to bright young scholars vanishing off the streets before surfacing mysteriously deceased in identical remote waterways with no intoxication, violence, evidence, or logic in transit means, and wider fears spread that a serial killer could be methodically targeting students. And as we move forward to 2008, cold case detective pioneer and former NYPD investigator Kevin Gannon reactivated inquiries into both Patrick and Larry's baffling deaths through an interdepartmental task force. Partnering with university criminal justice researchers, the ambitious team aimed at resurrecting upwards of 40 unsolved cases fitting an alarming pattern since the late 1990s. Several common threads connect student victims beyond big school status or late night partying and then vanishing. All of them were high-achieving scholar athlete types, often firstborn sons and with middle-class backgrounds. And just like the other story that I just told you about that I did a year ago, discovery scenes frequently contain another chilling signature, which was what happened on my last video. A smiley face, style graffiti right nearby. Now, is this a mere coincidence or the sinister calling card of an underground death squad, also known as the Smiley Face Killers? I mean, some university communities leak whispers of a clandestine fraternal organization dating back a century. And through privileged recruitment, such mythic sects indoctrinate star pupils into ritualistic codes of conduct around academics, ethics, guiding campus life from the shadows. But how far will the Brotherhood go to protect its elitist existence if compromised? And do these celebrated missing student victims share hidden ties that doomed all of them? Or is a depraved fraternal death pact itself the stuff of campfire fable? Without any evidence either way, the debate rages on. But today, the McNeill Andrews cases, among many in the smiley face killer docket, remain frustratingly unsolved. Gannon and research partners continue hunting for that first smoking gun that could definitively prove whether a powerful predatory syndicate is in order or its mere statistical fluke, in which extinguished so much promising youth. Now, for the grieving families seeking truth and closure, it's a prolonged nightmare. Each new chilling drowning dredges memories, hoping this complex mystery plaguing campuses finds coherent resolution. Be it a diabolical cabal or random tragedy, either monster provokes lasting unease for students entering adulthood already uncertain of foes hiding in light or darkness. Because when the promising among us depart without warning or explanation, 9 times out of 10, there's a sinister force at work. In the dense Oklahoma woodlands, a decades-old summer nightmare still haunts all who hear its telling. And our tragic tale opens up in Mayes County, 30,000 strong, yet cast under a dark shadow since that vicious June night. With Tulsa 50 miles west and infinite forest bordering the remoteness, the rustic camp had sparkled as a sanctuary for these young girls seeking adventure annually since 1928. Until, that is, unseen evil emerged from the shadows that year. No child had faced peril in those woods. And that's where you're going to meet Michelle Hoffman, a 15-year-old counselor relishing her 7th guiding summer, having aged out of attending herself. Little did she know on intake day what darkness was to descend. And as Hoffman chatted it up with this shy new camper, Doris Milner, she remembered her own fearful first days in this environment years ago. And the looming canopy blocking all light once sunset hit proved intimidating for any newcomer. But Hoffman reassured Doris's mother her experienced guidance would ensure safe passage through the initially anxiety-riddled initiation all campers faced when first witnessing the forest's consuming blackness. The scenic 2-mile wooded drive from Locust Grove town could never foreshadow such settings' potential for vice. After a mere hour bus ride from Tulsa, the 130 registered girls leapt into the fresh air, crossing the threshold into Camp Scott's boundaries, unaware of the secrets that it held. And that's when Hoffman personally escorted young Doris, just 8 years old, to Kiowa tent number 8, chosen for its proximity to the latrines and the kitchen. And once she got inside, she met fast friends in fellow 8-year-old Lori Lee Farmer and 9-year-old Michelle Goose. And despite any shyness, this laughter and play came naturally between the trio as counselor Carla Willett looked on contently. And by nightfall, their tent bustled with as much giggly chaos as any other on the campgrounds. And then comes lights out for the preteens, and an evening thunderstorm then rippled through, only tightening bonds as the girls weathered the hours huddled together. If only an act of God had been their sole disturbance destined to prey on their vulnerability out there, things would have turned out much different. Then, as the sun rose by about 8 a.m., signs of an unfathomable crime perpetrated under forest cover emerged. And as word of this accident trickled back to Tulsa, investigator insights at the scene revealed precisely how vicious and deliberate the events at Kiowa 8 had been. Farmer and Goose had been gruesomely and tragically bludgeoned to death, while strangulation stole Milner's final breaths. Carnal abuse and such savagery towards children whose purity left them defenseless against an entity appearing out of nowhere to enact brutal fantasies without conscience. The state in which Wilhit discovered the tiny victims burned horrid images into her memory. Why had one girl been carried away and dumped somewhere else? In fact, that moment where murderous eyes watching her, taking sadistic pleasure in the counselor's horror upon recognizing the discarded remains? For most parents, by 2:15 p.m., euphoric reunions replaced the separation anxiety that had built up. But for 3 sets of mothers and fathers, only devastation loomed ahead. In the preceding darkness, multiple reports of alarming disturbances filtered back in hindsight. For one, moaning arose from outside around 1:30 a.m., prompting a counselor's fruitless search for its distressing origin. An hour later, in tent number 7, flashlights temporarily blinded a startled girl without explanation. And by approximately 3 a.m., one camper awoke to screams calling out for her mother, while another heard distinct crying. And in the purported getaway period between 2 and 3 a.m., a nearby resident noted peculiar traffic on the road flanking Scott grounds. I mean, the blood soaked into the soil told of the victim's suffering, clawing desperately at their attacker. Mattresses and towels appearing wound with carnage hinted at failed efforts to sanitize the location. Shoe impressions inside and outside Kiowa 8 muddied theories, some dimensions different, suggesting multiple perpetrators. Duct tape, cord, and a flashlight littered the area, and one vital fingerprint lifted from the torch could not be matched to any known felons. Thus, the investigation pivoted towards what mastermind had been staking out these murders ahead of time. In frightening retrospect, a dumped-out counselor cabin from April held an anonymous note proclaiming the explicit mission to kill 3 girls in one tent. And it was signed cryptically by the self-declared killer. Camp leadership sickeningly dismissed the act as a joke, rather than heeding appropriate warning. And then, all of a sudden, a break. On June 16th, Sheriff Glenn Weaver declared finding the murder weapon itself. Yet contradicting reports denied this development by District Attorney Sid Wise just as rapidly. In any event, police canines picking up scent trails led to a cave situated 2 miles from the camp, and inside a flashlight battery matching the discovered light, eyeglasses potentially stolen from the camp during the crimes, and photos of unknown women. Analyzing the photos, Jean Leroy Hart was pinpointed as a suspect in the targeted slayings, but he would not be the only seeming person of interest to emerge. Hart immediately struck authorities as a viable culprit, with prior convictions for assault and kidnapping preceding his 1973 escape from Mays County Jail. So all this suspicion compounded around this Cherokee man, and for years his tribal community allegedly harbored his fugitive status. This obsession with tracking Hart defined Sheriff Weaver's agenda for resolving this case. And after $1.25 million was dedicated to the largest Oklahoma manhunt ever, the FBI closed in on Cherokee tribal land. And then there, on April 6, 1978, Hart was captured once more, hiding in a cabin after nearly 5 years evading capture. And to his sympathetic Native supporters, Hart made for the perfect foil to draw attention from a flawed investigation. Focused scrutiny on other sexual assaultists nearby or other leads were ignored, they claimed, in the crusade to convict Hart swiftly under the media's pressure. Nonetheless, Hart was detained at the state penitentiary to await capital trial. And then from March 19th until May 30th, 1979, sensational prosecution arguments emphasized Hart's glasses at the crime scene with duct tape strands consistent with his hair sample. The defense, though, combated such circumstantial suggestions of his presence. Rather, they proclaimed Weaver planted the glasses from prior victims, while Hart openly copped up to those separate attacks. And then, in a surprise witness bombshell, local diner waitress Dean Boyd took the stand to relay seeing an incredibly nervous man 15 miles from Camp Scott, matching the composite image in the early AM after the slaying. Though nameless initially, police records soon connected this report to one William Stevens, a convicted sexual assaultist matching said description. And then an even more unsettling testimony surfaced next. Stevens' friend Dwayne Peters took the stand to allege loaning Stevens the exact flashlight model that was identified. Most disturbingly, Peters recounted Stevens admitting to the grisly deeds in October 1977 during a conversation. Yet, despite accruing supporting accounts painting Stevens or mystery accomplices as potential perpetrators, the jury reached a verdict in under 5 minutes. And on March 30th, 1979, Jean Leroy Hart was acquitted unanimously for the slaying of Lori Farmer, Denise Milner, and Michelle Goose. And then Hart actually collapsed dead of heart failure on June 4th, 1979. But the final Camp Scott secrets had yet to be unearthed from the shadows. So nearly a decade later, in 1989, advanced forensics sequencing of original semen samples found 3 of 5 DNA markers consistent with Hart's genetic profile. Had justice been robbed by inconclusive evidence in 1979 all along? So then these civil suits launched against Camp Scott by victims' families in 1985, but those went nowhere, and doors remained indefinitely shuttered on the Girl Scout access to those fated acres ever again. And in the end, Camp Scott shuttered its gates and never welcomed anyone ever again. Now, part of the pantheon of unsolved murders, the horrid crimes at Camp Scott remain pored over by amateur sleuths hoping to find the truth. Only more theories and dreadful lore around Camp Scott murders persist today, through new eyes reanalyzing the twisted intricacies, seeking elusive closure to an unspeakable case. And if you know anything at all about any of these murders, please contact your local police department right now. Whoever did these heinous acts, whether it be Hart or somebody else, deserves to be caught, prosecuted, and spend their life in jail, if not worse. So just by any chance, if any of this audience that this goes out to knows that this might not be the truth or there's more to the story here, please, I beg of you, share what you know to somebody that can help. Alright guys, that's all I have for you today. I know this story can hit at home for a lot of people that have children, and that's why I kind of debated telling this one. And I definitely did lower down the language in certain parts, so if you want to know exactly what happened, you can read it on your own time, on your own accord. But since this story was given to me by one of you, I felt sort of an obligation to do it, and especially since it hasn't been solved, that really aggravates me. I mean, I'm not sure how much 3 out of 5 DNA markers means. I mean, could that mean a distant cousin? Or could it mean somebody that's in your family tree that's, I don't know. I really don't know. If somebody could educate me about that in the comments as well, that would be awesome. But I want right now you to tell me in the comments what you actually think happened. Okay, this was pretty recent. In July 2015, Russian police made a gruesome discovery. The body of an elderly woman hidden in these trash bags. And this was just the beginning of unraveling a horrific killing spree that spanned decades. Okay, so when a social worker was unable to meet with one of her regular clients like she usually did, 79-year-old Valentina Yalanova, she knew something was wrong. And upon visiting Valentina's St. Petersburg apartment, the social worker was met by a hostile older woman who refused to let her enter. And alarmed, the social worker then alerted the police. And the authorities were skeptical at first, just maybe, an eccentric older woman, they thought. But the social worker insisted. So officers knocked on the door of the apartment, and then an unkempt, wild-hair senior answered with this yellow-toothed grin, and she said, "I knew y'all would come. Valia isn't here. I killed her." Stunned at this point, the police brought the woman to the station for questioning. And that's when Tamara Samsonova explained that Valia was her friend and tenant. But you see, after an argument where Valia said that she'd be moving out, Tamara feared not being able to afford the apartment alone. So she decided to secretly kill Valia so her relatives would keep paying out that rent, buying her, 4 or 5 months apiece. And on the day in question, Tamara had drugged a salad she had fed Valia using phenazepam. Now, Tamara then went to bed and later found Valia lying unconscious on the kitchen floor. She said, "I wanted to carry her to the bathroom, but she was just too heavy." And then she shockingly described borrowing a hacksaw, then dismembering Valia's body on the kitchen floor viciously with no mercy. Tamara severed the arms, the legs, the head, the hands, and boiled the latter two in a pot on the stove to obliterate the identity. And then she started taking trips to dump the bagged body parts in a nearby pond under the cover of night. She said, "I managed to carry the hips and the legs only as far as the nearby yard. I dumped them just right there." So at this point, horrified, police were certain the woman was either insane or delusional. But then surveillance footage from outside the apartment showed her making several late-night trips carrying these heavy, bloody bags and pots. And in one of them, you could actually see contained unmistakably a human head. So the police arrested Tamara and searched her home, finding ample evidence of this crime. But they also uncovered her diary, most with mundane entries, but some explosively confessing the gruesome murders of other tenants over the years. In the diary, with entries written mostly in Russian, German, and English, most of the material was mundane. I worked 5 a.m. today and I was drinking coffee. Then I did work around the house. But other entries were pure dynamite. She said, "I killed my tenant Volodya, cut him to pieces in the bathroom with a knife, put the pieces of his body in plastic bags and then threw them away in different parts of Vrzensky district." It seemed that Tamara had killed and dismembered 11 people, including her husband, over the past decade. And when asked, she refused to confirm whether she had cannibalized the victims. She said, "It is such a disgrace for me, now everybody will know." That's right, there was no guilt or anything about actually being a serial killer and killing all these people off with knives and stabbings and then cutting them up and putting them all these places God knows where. But her anguish came from the fact that, her neighbors, and now it would be on the newspaper. Such a good grandma. And as the investigation continued, police traced Tamara's steps to the nearby yard where she admitted dumping some of the dismembered parts. A nondescript fenced-in area behind an auto repair shop contained a couple of dingy garages, and inside one of them was a grisly scene. Bloody old curtains wrapped around 2 human legs and a part of a pelvis. And the remains were quickly confirmed as Valentina Yanilova's, tying her directly to Tamara's detailed confession. So an extensive search was launched of the neighborhood and the outskirts of the neighborhood for more victim remnants. Plus, local pond waters were searched and dredged through while teams combed the nearby woods as well. And over the next week, most of Valentina's headless body was recovered in pieces from these different dumping sites, but strangely, some parts and her head were never found, even when Tamara's kitchen stove and pipes were scoured for traces. And I know I'm saying Tamara, I'm from New England, give me a break. Now, examination of the recovered body parts revealed the precise, almost surgical skill in which Valentina was dissected, uncharacteristic for a killer without anatomical training or experience. Tamara Samsonova is currently in police custody, although it is uncertain whether she will be declared fit to face criminal charges, as she herself informed the judge at her first court appearance.
I am haunted by this maniac upstairs. It is him who forced me to kill these people.
Hold on now, could this be a case of a possession? Now, was this maniac upstairs the real killer, or just a product of her imagination? Either way, Samsonova's was known not as Jack the Ripper, but as the Granny Ripper. And yes, this is a true story, and I am not kidding. She is called the Granny Ripper. And this case proves, if anything, that monsters can hide in plain sight. Sometimes evil wears the mask of a smiling grandparent. No matter how innocuous people may seem on the outside, darkness can still lurk within. Now, this story we'll call a real portal through space and time. And if I was to tell you that one of these actually existed, you'd be like, what? I didn't hear the news about this. Was this just discovered or made, or what's going on here? But then, what if I told you that this was actually not just discovered or made, and it actually was discovered or made centuries ago? Would you believe it? This story is for all my people in Europe, especially those that are closer to Great Britain, especially those that are close to London. So, among these endless rows of time-worn headstones in London's sprawling Brompton Cemetery, an air of mystery hung thick, veiling the secrets of the dearly departed. The seemingly innocuous grave markers conceal tales of scandal and of the arcane, but none whispered louder than legends surrounding an imposing Egyptian mausoleum. This ancient structure rose defiantly from the earth, adorned with these cryptic symbols, and guarded by a colossal copper door that seemed to taunt all the curious that wanted to go inside. It was no ordinary tomb. It was a gateway or portal through time itself. Now, the mausoleum's occupants were three enigmatic women, Hannah Courtois and her daughters, shrouded in the mists of speculation. Hannah's past became this canvas for rumors and conjecture. Some spun tales of her as a mistress, leveraging scandal into vast inheritances, while others insisted she delved into the occult, seeking the secrets of immortality. And when Hannah sadly departed this world, her friend, the eminent Egyptologist Joseph Bonomi, took it upon himself to create a peculiar tomb, a structure that had defied conventional understanding. Bonomi was immersed in this ancient world, and he spent years decoding hieroglyphs and rituals, and convinced himself that the Egyptians held profound wisdom, whether it was about death and the cosmos. Hannah, too, succumbed to the allure of esoteric teachings in her quest to cheat death. So the mausoleum that they designed became a cryptic enigma, perplexing historians for over a century. And amidst the labyrinth of passages of the tomb, clues emerging linking Hannah to Samuel Warner, an enigmatic inventor with a penchant for the extraordinary. Warner's claims of creating advanced weaponry using unseen principles drew skepticism, but he remained undeterred, even detonating a ship before a skeptical crowd to prove his prowess by using this so-called invisible forces. Some people whispered of this clandestine collaboration between Warner and Bonomi, hinting at an otherworldly device hidden within the mausoleum. And as the whispers of their collaboration intensified, tragedy then struck. Warner, the audacious inventor himself, was found dead under mysterious circumstances mere months after the completion of the mausoleum. The secrets of their ambitious project perished with them. The tomb sealed for over a century, concealing its inner workings and the mysterious inheritance that funded its construction. The three women, Hannah and her daughters, faded from the archives of history, as if they had just slipped away into another realm. An ancient statue, just a silent witness to the unfolding drama, gazed unknowingly upon the scene, suggesting that death might not be the ultimate conclusion. So behind the impenetrable copper doors engraved with symbols hinting at arcane knowledge, could a passage through time await? Well, in the heart of London's Brompton Cemetery, the enigma persisted. A discovery waiting to unravel the intricate plot set in motion during the Victorian era. The suspenseful air lingered, echoing through the weathered stones, leaving a tantalizing question in the minds of those who dared to ponder the mysteries buried within. All the ones from before and that still gaze upon this huge mausoleum truly wonder if this is really a portal throughout the rivers of time. Now, if you are one of the people who watch my content from England or Great Britain, firstly, thank you. But secondly, please, in the comments, let me know if you've ever heard of this enigmatic tale, or if you've ever been to Brompton Cemetery yourself and have possibly seen this huge mausoleum. I thank you guys, though. Those are my two stories. Make sure to join. Make sure to go to Patreon. Make sure to try the merch. And please get this up to 60 views so I can give you guys another story. I got a bunch. Don't you want 2 a week? It's up to you. I'll see you next time. Cheers.